Thank you. Good to be with you.
You were thoroughly attacked yesterday by several of your Republican rivals for the presidential nomination, specifically over your contention that the U.S. has itself to blame for its policies around the world and the Muslim world for some of the terrorist attacks, some of the hatred of the United States. Listen to what some of them said about your position on this.
Iran, you need a thorough understanding of what radical jihad is, what the movement is, what its intent is, where it flows from.
Iran's analysis is really seriously flawed. The idea that the attack took place because of American foreign policy is precisely the reason I handed back a $10 million check to a Saudi prince.
All right, Congressman, what do you say to the criticism that you're blaming the victim, the United States, for the policies?
Well, that's not correct, because I don't blame the American people, and I don't blame somebody who gets murdered for the murder. You have to look for the cause and the incentive and the motive. And the motive is that our foreign policy does aggravate a lot of people. You don't blame the American people, but you have to understand what's going on. It's interesting that they attacked me, but I really was defending my position with George Bush's position in the year 2000, when he didn't want to get into nation building. He didn't want to police the world. He wanted a more humble foreign policy. In those two statements you just heard, it wasn't very humble. It was really a vicious attack on Muslims, and they say that, oh no, it's only the radicals, but they paint a picture where you have to attack the Muslim world and you blame the Muslim religion, and I don't think that's true whatsoever. I know there's radicals there, and I know they will attack us, but if we don't understand the motive, if we continue to believe that they attack us because we're free and prosperous, we can't win this fight. We have to understand the issue of blowback. We have to understand the issue of unintended consequences, and that if we have a presence in the Arab world and the Muslim world, there are consequences. And I pointed out to them, and they don't listen to this, is how would we react if somebody did exactly the same thing to us? The American people would be outraged.
Well, what about the contention that if somebody wants to go out and kill you, you have to, I guess, have a responsibility to kill them first before you die? What do you make of this notion there are people out there who want to kill Americans, and that if the United States doesn't go out and attack them first, they're simply going to go ahead and kill us?
Well, that's sort of like saying there's a lot of murderers in the country, and we have to go out and start killing people that we think might potentially commit murder and just go shooting people. I mean, Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. There was no al-Qaeda in Iraq. The insanity of a change of foreign policy to a preemptive war position where we start the wars under the pretense that Iraq had something to do with 9/11 is just a preposterous idea and has gotten us into trouble. In the same way with the Iranians. The Iranians were actually helpful after 9/11, and we just turned our back on them, and we made them an evil empire, and we threatened them with actually a nuclear first strike. This makes no sense whatsoever, and I think the American people are very frightened by this.
You also had on domestic economic policy this exchange with former Senator Fred Thompson last night. I'll play it.
We tax. We borrow from the Chinese, we can't borrow enough. Then what do? We print the money, and then you wonder where the inflation comes? Don't print any more money. We don't need any more money.
So if we would stop printing so much money, we could get out of the war and provide health care to everybody.
We'd get out of the war and we wouldn't have to print the money.
I just wanted
What's wrong with backing the money by something?
I wanted to make sure I had this right.
All right, I want you to explain what you mean, because a lot of Americans are probably confused. What do you mean when you say the U.S. should simply stop printing dollars?
Well, that's an old cliche for when they used to print dollars, they used to dilute the metals for fighting wars. In this day and age, we use a computer to create billions of dollars. This is how you can afford, on a short-term basis, financing war. We did this in the 1960s. We argued you could have guns and butter, and we had a very, very serious problem in the 1970s with the breakdown of the monetary system and inflation of 15% and interest rates of 21%. We're doing the same thing again, except we're in a worse shape today. But all wars, essentially throughout history, have been fought through inflation. Inflation is when you increase the supply of money, dilute the value of the money, and when the dollar goes down, prices go up. So this is what I'm arguing. It's because of the inflationary monetary system that we're allowed to, our politicians, to get way overextended, and they do this overseas. We've borrowed to the hilt from the Chinese. and that we couldn't even fight the war without the Chinese, but the market is telling us we can't continue to print and create money out of thin air to fight this war and run the domestic welfare state, because it'll ruin the dollar, and that's what the dollar is telling us today. I mean, the Canadian dollar is more valuable than the American dollar, and our dollar is down like 60% against the euro, and this cannot be ignored. This will bring our economy down.
You've raised an incredible sum of money over the last 3 months, about $20 million. You're in league with Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. They both raised about $20 million as well. Scott Reed, who was the campaign manager for Bob Dole back in '96, he said this the other day. He said, Ron Paul's only option is to buy as many flat-screen TVs as he can, put Ron Paul bumper stickers on them, and hand them out to voters in New Hampshire. I just don't see where he goes. He will probably be the only presidential candidate ever to have a surplus when he drops out, because he has an incredible amount of money and no campaign strategy to win. You want to respond to Scott Reed?
Well, we have a major task. When you think about returning this country to the Constitution, we have drifted from the Constitution in the past 100 years. The Congress ignores it, the courts ignore it, the executive branch ignores it, but there's a large number of dedicated Americans who believe that America was a great country when we obeyed the Constitution, that liberty was more important than largesse and special interest government. This is a major undertaking to take on the military-industrial complex, the medical-industrial complex, and all the special interests by individuals sending in money. So I think we've done a tremendous job, but we also know what we're doing. We're not tinkering with the system. We're not talking about mismanaging the war in Iraq. We're talking about the change in foreign policy that was established by Woodrow Wilson, our pretense that we're able to make the world safe for democracy and forever spend ourselves into oblivion. I mean, this is a major undertaking, but the revolution toward this goal has actually begun, and how far we go in the campaign, we don't know. But I'll tell you what, the American people, and there's this large segment sending the money to our campaign, that are determined that this revolutionary spirit will continue.
Ron Paul, thanks very much for joining us. Good luck.
Thank you, Wolf.
Still to come, my interviews with Fred Thompson.